Tony Soprano is a murderer, a cheater, and a sociopath. He's also the most lovable character in television history. That contrast made 13.4 million people tune in to watch exactly how that happened, making The Sopranos among the most watched HBO series finales in history. Look, I've watched a lot of television. A lot. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what David Chase unleashed in 1999. James Gandolfini not only played Tony Soprano, he became him. The man gained 70 pounds for this role and made every second of screen time feel like you were watching a real person, not an actor. When Tony had panic attacks, I felt them in my chest. When he smiled at his kids, I forgot he was a killer. That's not acting, but pure magic. And let's talk about Edie Falco for a second. Carmela Soprano could have been just another mob wife, standing in the background looking pretty. But Falco turned her into this complex woman who knew exactly what her husband did for a living and chose to look the other way for the lifestyle. The guilt, denial, and anger, she made you feel all of it. Now what you don't know is that HBO almost passed on this show. They thought audiences wouldn't connect with a mobster protagonist. They were worried about glorifying violence. Thank God someone had the sense to greenlight it, because The Sopranos changed everything. Every prestige drama that came after, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, The Wire, they all owe a debt to what Chase created. The budget for the first season was relatively modest by today's standards, about $50 million for 13 episodes. But Chase used every penny perfectly. Those New Jersey locations were not only backdrops, but also characters themselves. The Bada Bing strip club, the Soprano house in North Caldwell, even that goddamn duck pond, they all became iconic. How the show made therapy cool for men is impressive. Before Tony Soprano, tough guys didn't talk about their feelings. They bottled everything up and dealt with problems through violence. But here's this mob boss, this alpha male's alpha male, sitting in Dr. Melfi's office talking about his mother's issues and panic attacks. It normalized mental health discussions in a way nothing else could have. The cultural impact is insane. This show single-handedly put HBO on the map as a serious content creator. It proved that audiences were hungry for complex, morally ambiguous characters. It showed that television could be just as sophisticated as film, maybe more so because you had hours to explore these characters. But here's what the show really means. It's about the death of the American dream. Tony Soprano represents this country's relationship with violence and capitalism. He's trying to be a good father and husband while running a criminal organization. He wants respect and love while intimidating and hurting people. That's America for you, baby. Wanting to be the good guy while doing terrible things. Every time you laughed at Tony's jokes or felt bad when someone betrayed him, you became part of the moral ambiguity. You can't watch this show as an innocent bystander, as it forces you to examine your own values. Now, you're probably wondering, does it hold up? Does a show from 1999 still hit the same way? The themes are more relevant than ever. The performances still give me chills. The writing makes everything else look like amateur hour. All right, enough analysis. You came here for the story, so let me tell you exactly what happens across 6 seasons of the greatest television show ever made. Season 1, Tony Soprano drives to work every morning like any other suburban dad. Except his office is the back room of a strip club, and his daily meetings involve discussing who needs to get whacked. When we first meet him, he's having panic attacks so severe he's passing out. What sends a mob boss to therapy? Family problems, of course. Dr. Jennifer Melfi becomes Tony's therapist, and their sessions form the backbone of the entire series. She's this brilliant psychiatrist who finds herself fascinated and terrified by her most dangerous patient. Tony starts therapy because he collapsed at a family barbecue while watching ducks in his pool. Those ducks become a recurring symbol as they represent family. And Tony's terrified they'll fly away and never come back. Tony's running the North Jersey mob family after his uncle Junior Soprano gets arrested. But Junior doesn't just fade into the background. He starts plotting against Tony from the moment he gets out on bail. Family loyalty in the Soprano world is complicated. Blood doesn't mean trust, and trust doesn't guarantee survival. The family dysfunction runs deep. Tony's mother, Livia, is a master manipulator who makes everyone's life miserable while playing the victim. She's constantly threatening suicide and making passive-aggressive comments that cut deeper than any weapon. Tony's trying to manage a criminal empire while dealing with a mother who could give lessons in psychological warfare. At home, Tony's wife, Carmela, knows exactly what her husband does for a living. She's not naive. She's willfully ignorant because the lifestyle is too good to give up. Their daughter, Meadow, is a smart kid heading to college, and their son, AJ, is struggling to find his identity in the shadow of a father he doesn't really understand. The business side gets complicated when Tony's nephew, Christopher Moltisanti, starts making moves in the organization. Christopher is ambitious but reckless, and Tony sees potential in him while also recognizing the danger. Their relationship becomes central to the entire series. It's about mentorship, family loyalty, and the price of the life they've chosen. Tony's crew includes some unforgettable characters. There's Polly Walnuts, a loyal but paranoid soldier who's been with the family for decades. Silvio Dante runs the strip club and serves as Tony's consigliere, his most trusted advisor. Then there's Salvatore, Big Pussy Bon Pensiero, Tony's childhood friend who becomes a major problem as the season progresses. The FBI pressure starts building early. Agent Skip Lipari is working informants and trying to build a case against the family. Law enforcement becomes a constant threat hanging over every decision Tony makes. They're watching, waiting, and looking for any opportunity to bring down the organization. Personal relationships get messy quickly. Tony starts an affair with Dr. Melfi, but she maintains professional boundaries even as she's clearly attracted to the danger he represents. The sexual tension in their therapy sessions creates some of the most compelling television ever filmed. Violence erupts when disputes can't be solved through conversation. Tony's crew deals with problems the only way they know how, through intimidation and elimination. When someone crosses the family, the response is swift and brutal. This isn't glamorized violence. It's ugly, personal, and devastating for everyone involved. The season builds to a climax when Junior decides Tony is becoming too powerful. He orders a hit on his own nephew, setting up a confrontation that will define their relationship for the rest of the series. Family meetings become strategic planning sessions, and Sunday dinner turns into psychological warfare. By the end of season 1, Tony has survived multiple attempts on his life, consolidated his power within the organization, and begun the therapy process that will consume the rest of the series. But the real victory is that audiences fell completely in love with a character who should be completely unlikable. Season 2. Season 2 opens with Tony firmly in control of the family, but control is an illusion in this world. The FBI investigation intensifies when they flip Big Pussy, turning Tony's childhood friend into an informant. This betrayal cuts deeper than any business dispute because it violates the most sacred rule: you never cooperate with law enforcement. The emotional weight of having a rat in the inner circle affects everyone differently. Tony becomes more paranoid and suspicious. Silvio starts questioning every conversation. Polly develops elaborate theories about who might be talking. The brotherhood they've built their lives around starts cracking under the pressure of distrust. Richie April gets released from prison and immediately starts causing problems. He's old school mob, the kind of guy who thinks respect is earned through fear and violence. Richie doesn't understand that Tony's leadership style involves more psychology and less brutality. Their conflict becomes inevitable because they represent different generations of organized crime. The Richie situation gets complicated when he starts dating Tony's sister, Janice. She's just returned to New Jersey after years of drifting around the country, and she's carrying all the family dysfunction you'd expect from Livia Soprano's daughter. Janice sees Richie as her ticket to financial security, but she doesn't understand the dangerous game she's playing. Tony's therapy sessions with Dr. Melfi go deeper into his psychological makeup. They explore his relationship with his parents, his feelings about violence, and his struggle to maintain two separate identities. These conversations reveal layers of Tony's personality that make him more human and somehow more terrifying at the same time. Christopher's drug problem starts becoming apparent. He's using heroin while trying to prove himself as a serious member of the organization. Tony wants to help his nephew, but he also can't afford to have unreliable people in key positions. The tension between family loyalty and business necessity creates some of the season's most powerful moments. Carmela's moral struggles intensify as she becomes more aware of the violence surrounding their lifestyle. She starts seeing a therapist herself, but she's not ready to confront the fundamental contradiction of her marriage. Carmela wants the benefits of Tony's criminal success without acknowledging the cost. The kids are growing up and asking harder questions. Meadow is smart enough to figure out what her father really does, and AJ is starting to understand why other parents act nervous around his dad. Tony tries to shield them from the business, but the violence keeps creeping closer to home. Federal pressure increases when the FBI starts surveillance operations that feel more like harassment. They're following family members, monitoring phone calls, and making their presence known at every opportunity. The psychological pressure of constant surveillance starts affecting everyone's behavior. Tony's relationship with his mother reaches a breaking point when he discovers she was involved in Junior's plot against him. The betrayal by his own mother forces Tony to confront the reality that family loyalty doesn't guarantee love or protection. Some wounds never heal, and some relationships can't be repaired. The Richie April situation escalates throughout the season. He starts challenging Tony's authority in front of other family members, questioning decisions, and generally making himself a problem that can't be ignored. In the mob world, disrespect is a cancer that spreads if it's not cut out immediately. Business ventures get more complex as Tony tries to legitimize some of the family's income streams. They're involved in construction, waste management, and various forms of loan sharking, but every legitimate business becomes a front for illegal activities, and every legal transaction has an illegal component. The season builds toward multiple confrontations that will reshape the family structure. Big Pussy's betrayal betrayal is discovered, creating a situation that can only end one way. Richie's challenge to Tony's authority reaches a point where violence becomes inevitable, and the FBI investigation starts producing results that threaten everyone's freedom. Personal relationships continue deteriorating under the pressure of the lifestyle. Marriage, friendship, and family bonds all become casualties of the criminal enterprise. Trust becomes a luxury nobody can afford, and paranoia becomes a survival mechanism. The season finale brings resolution to several major plot lines while setting up new conflicts for the future. Characters make choices that will define their roles for the rest of the series. Some survive their mistakes, others don't, and everyone learns that in Tony Soprano's world, family business is always personal, and personal business can always turn deadly. Season 2 establishes the template for the entire series. The constant tension between family loyalty and survival, the psychological pressure of living a double life, and the inevitable consequences of choosing violence as a solution to problems. Every character is forced to confront who they really are aside from the roles they play, and most of them don't like what they discover. Season 3. Ralph Cifaretto arrives like a tornado and everything gets messier. This guy is pure chaos wrapped in expensive suits. He's violent, unpredictable, and completely lacking in judgment. Tony inherits Ralph when he takes over the April crew, but managing him becomes like trying to control a rabid dog. The relationship between Tony and Ralph starts badly and gets worse. Ralph makes money for the family, which Tony respects, but his methods are so brutal and reckless that they attract unwanted attention. When Ralph beats a pregnant stripper to death outside the Bada Bing, Tony realizes he's dealing with someone who might be genuinely psychotic. Gloria Trillo enters Tony's life as his new therapist's patient, and their affair becomes the most intense relationship of the series. She's beautiful, intelligent, and completely unstable. Exactly Tony's type. What starts as sexual attraction turns into something darker when Tony discovers that Gloria has the same manipulative tendencies as his mother. The Gloria situation spirals out of control quickly. She becomes obsessed with Tony's family life, demanding more attention and threatening to expose their relationship. Tony finds himself trapped between his attraction to her and his growing fear of what she might do. The psychological games she plays remind him too much of his mother's manipulation tactics. Christopher's addiction problems get worse despite Tony's attempts to help him. He's nodding off during important meetings, making mistakes that could get people killed, and generally proving that heroin and organized crime don't mix. Tony faces an impossible choice between family loyalty and business necessity. The intervention scene becomes one of the series' most powerful moments. Tony organizes a fake intervention where the crew confronts Christopher about his drug use, but it turns into a usual mob solution: threats and violence instead of actual help. Christopher enters rehab, but everyone knows he's going through the motions. Meadow starts dating Noah Tannenbaum, and Tony's racist attitudes come flooding out. He can't handle his daughter dating a black Jewish student from Columbia, and his attempts to break them up reveal the ugly prejudices that exist alongside his liberal political views. The contradiction between Tony's values and his actions becomes impossible to ignore. Jackie Aprile Jr. returns from military school and immediately starts making stupid decisions. He's the son of Tony's former boss, which gives him status he hasn't earned. Jackie Jr. wants to be a gangster without understanding what that actually means. He sees the glamour, but misses the consequences. The relationship between Jackie Jr. and Meadow complicates everything. Tony doesn't want his daughter involved with anyone from life, but he also can't directly interfere without revealing too much about his own business. He tries subtle manipulation, but Jackie Jr. is too dumb to take the hints. Paulie's paranoia reaches new heights when he starts suspecting everyone of being informants. His relationship with Tony becomes strained when old secrets surface and new suspicions develop. Paulie begins questioning whether his lifetime of loyalty has been properly appreciated and rewarded. The Pine Barrens episode becomes legendary when Paulie and Christopher get lost in the woods after a collection goes wrong. They're hunting a Russian who may or may not be dead, trudging through snow in expensive clothes, arguing about survival techniques they learned from movies. It's comedy and terror mixed together perfectly. Family dynamics shift when Tony's sister Barbara gets married, bringing together all the Soprano family dysfunction in one location. These family gatherings always turn into psychological battlegrounds where old grievances surface and new wounds get inflicted through passive-aggressive comments and calculated insults. Dr. Melfi's professional ethics get tested as her relationship with Tony deepens. She knows she should refer him to another therapist, but she's fascinated by the psychological complexity of treating someone so dangerous. Their sessions become a form of intellectual seduction that threatens both their safety. The FBI investigation takes a personal turn when they start targeting family members more aggressively. Surveillance becomes harassment, and the psychological pressure of constant monitoring starts affecting everyone's behavior. Simple activities like grocery shopping become exercises in counter-surveillance. Business disputes escalate into violence when negotiations fail. The construction rackets, garbage contracts, and loan sharking operations all generate conflicts that can only be resolved through intimidation or elimination. Every business meeting carries the potential for deadly consequences. Tony's relationship with his crew becomes more complex as his leadership style evolves. He's trying to be less brutal than previous bosses while maintaining the respect that keeps everyone in line. But showing weakness in this world can be fatal, and showing too much strength creates new enemies. The season builds toward Jackie Jr.'s attempted robbery of a family poker game, a decision so monumentally stupid that it forces Tony to make choices he doesn't want to make. When kids from connected families cross certain lines, the consequences affect everyone involved. Personal relationships continue deteriorating under the pressure of the criminal lifestyle. Trust becomes impossible when everyone has secrets worth killing for. Love gets twisted into manipulation, and loyalty becomes a weapon used to control behavior. The Gloria Trillo situation reaches its climax when Tony realizes she's a threat to his family's safety. Their breakup turns violent and ugly, revealing the darkness that exists beneath the passion. Tony learns that some relationships are too dangerous to continue, regardless of the emotional cost. Season 3 establishes the pattern of Tony's self-destructive behavior in relationships while showing how the criminal enterprise affects every aspect of family life. The line between business and personal becomes impossible to maintain when violence is always an option. Season 4. The Jackie Aprile Jr. situation finally gets resolved in the only way it could, with violence. Tony can't let the poker game robbery go unpunished without looking weak, but he also can't directly order the hit because of Jackie's family connections. The solution involves letting someone else handle the problem while maintaining plausible deniability. Meadows' reaction to Jackie Jr.'s death reveals how much she understands about her father's world. She knows Tony was involved, but she can't prove it, and doesn't really want to know the details. The relationship between father and daughter becomes more complicated as she stops pretending ignorance about the family business. Furio Giunta arrives from Italy to work for Tony, and his presence changes the dynamic within the crew. He's an old-world mafia trained in Sicily, and his methods are more traditional and brutal than what the New Jersey family is used to. Furio brings European sophistication mixed with deadly competence. The attraction between Furio and Carmela develops slowly and becomes the most dangerous relationship of her marriage. She's drawn to his European charm and the attention he pays her, while he falls genuinely in love with his boss's wife. Both of them know this attraction could get them killed, but they can't stay away from each other. Adriana LaCurva gets pulled into the FBI investigation when they arrest her for drug possession and offer her a deal. She becomes an informant to avoid prison time, but she has no idea how to gather information without arousing suspicion. Her relationship with Christopher becomes a weapon the FBI uses against the family. The Adriana situation creates incredible tension because she's genuinely trying to protect Christopher while betraying him at the same time. She loves him, but can't tell him about her cooperation with law enforcement. Every conversation becomes potential evidence, and every moment of intimacy carries the weight of deception. Ralph Cifaretto's relationship with Rosalie Aprile complicates the crew dynamics. She's Jackie Aprile Sr.'s widow, which gives her special status, but Ralph's treatment of women is so terrible that everyone expects disaster. Their relationship becomes another source of tension within the organization. The conflict between Ralph and Tony intensifies when Ralph's son Justin gets severely injured in an archery accident. Ralph's reaction to his son's condition reveals unexpected depth in his character, but it also shows his complete inability to handle emotional situations without resorting to violence or manipulation. Christopher's filmmaking ambitions surface when he decides to write a screenplay about mob life. His script, You Bark, I Bite, becomes a source of comedy and concern because it reveals how little he understands about storytelling while potentially exposing family secrets. Tony has to balance supporting Christopher's dreams with protecting operational security. The Esplanade construction project becomes a major source of income and conflict. Tony partners with his cousin Tony Blundetto's crew to secure contracts, but the project attracts attention from other families and law enforcement. Legitimate business ventures become more complicated than criminal enterprises. Carmine Lupertazzi Sr. and Johnny Sack's relationship with Tony shifts as New York family politics become more important. What starts as cooperation turns into competition when territorial disputes arise. The alliance between New Jersey and New York families begins showing cracks that will eventually lead to war. Paulie's loyalty gets questioned when his relationship with Johnny Sack becomes too friendly. Tony starts suspecting that Paulie might be sharing information with New York, and paranoia begins affecting their longtime friendship. Trust becomes a luxury nobody can afford when survival depends on secrecy. The therapy sessions with Dr. Melfi explore deeper psychological territory as Tony begins understanding his patterns of behavior. He starts recognizing his mother's influence on his personality, but understanding the problem doesn't necessarily lead to changing the behavior. self-awareness becomes another form of torture. Family relationships continue deteriorating as the pressure of the criminal lifestyle affects everyone differently. AJ starts acting out in school, Meadow becomes more distant and judgmental, and Carmela begins questioning whether the lifestyle is worth the emotional cost to their children. The Whitecap's house becomes a symbol of Tony and Carmela's marriage problems. She wants to buy this expensive property as a summer home, but Tony's affair with his Russian mistress Svetlana gets exposed, leading to a massive fight that threatens to destroy their marriage entirely. The marriage crisis forces both Tony and Carmela to confront the reality of their relationship. She throws him out of the house, demands a divorce, and tries to build an independent life. But leaving Tony means giving up the lifestyle she's become accustomed to, and starting over seems impossible. Dr. Melfi's own life becomes complicated when she gets brutally attacked and raped in a parking garage. The legal system fails her when her attacker gets released on a technicality, leaving her with the knowledge that Tony could solve her problem with one phone call. Her decision not to ask for his help reveals the moral complexity of their relationship. The season explores themes of consequence and accountability as characters face the results of their choices. Violence creates cycles of revenge that become impossible to escape. Personal relationships become casualties of the criminal enterprise, and everyone learns that some decisions can't be undone. Business operations become more sophisticated as Tony tries to insulate himself from direct involvement in illegal activities. But delegation creates new problems when subordinates make mistakes or pursue their own agendas. Control becomes an illusion when you're relying on other people to follow orders. The FBI pressure continues building as they develop better intelligence about family operations. Surveillance becomes more targeted, and the psychological pressure of constant monitoring starts affecting decision-making at every level. Simple conversations become potential evidence. Season 4 establishes the foundation for the final conflicts of the series. Relationships that seemed solid begin cracking under pressure. Loyalties that appeared absolute become negotiable when survival is at stake. And everyone begins understanding that the choices they've made have consequences that extend far beyond their original intentions. Season 5, Tony Blundetto gets released from prison after 20 years, and his return changes everything. He's Tony's cousin, his childhood partner in crime, and the guy who was supposed to be with Tony during the hijacking that launched Tony's career. But 20 years in prison have changed Tony Blundetto. He wants to go straight, and that creates problems nobody expected. The relationship between the two Tonys becomes complicated immediately. Tony Soprano feels guilty about his cousin doing time for a crime they planned together, so he tries to help Tony Blundetto readjust to civilian life. Only that generosity in the mob world always comes with strings attached, and those strings eventually become nooses. Tony Blundetto starts working legitimate jobs, first at a laundromat, then trying to become a licensed massage therapist. But minimum wage feels like an insult to someone who used to make real money through crime. The temptation to return to illegal activities becomes stronger as legitimate work proves financially insufficient. Adriana's situation with the FBI reaches a crisis point when Agent Sanseverino pushes her to provide more valuable information. She's been wearing a wire and reporting on conversations, but the pressure to deliver bigger intelligence threatens to expose her cooperation. Every interaction with Christopher becomes a potential trap. The relationship between Adriana and Christopher deteriorates as the stress of her secret cooperation affects their daily life. She's constantly nervous, making excuses for strange behavior, and trying to gather information without arousing suspicion. Christopher notices the changes but attributes them to relationship problems rather than federal investigation. Feech LaManna gets released from prison and immediately starts challenging Tony's authority. He's an old-school mafia who doesn't respect Tony's leadership style, and he begins operating independently without permission. This kind of disrespect can't be tolerated, but handling it requires delicate maneuvering to avoid appearing weak or brutal. The Feech situation escalates when he starts running illegal card games without giving Tony his proper percentage. This isn't just about money, but about respect and maintaining the hierarchy that keeps the organization functioning. Tony has to respond decisively while avoiding actions that might bring unwanted attention. Steve Buscemi joins the cast as Tony Blundetto, and his performance brings complexity to the role of the reformed criminal trying to stay straight. He shows how prison changes people, how guilt affects relationships, and how difficult it becomes to maintain legitimate employment when illegal alternatives offer better financial rewards. Carmela's separation from Tony forces her to confront the reality of her financial dependence. She tries to build her own life, starts dating again, and attempts to establish independence. But everything she owns came from Tony's criminal activities, and starting over proves more difficult than she anticipated. The separation affects the children differently. Meadow becomes more critical of her father's lifestyle and starts questioning the source of their family's wealth. AJ struggles with his parents' separation and begins acting out in ways that reveal his confusion about family loyalty and moral responsibility. Dr. Melfi's decision not to ask Tony for help with her rapist creates a turning point in their therapeutic relationship. She knows Tony would solve her problem through violence, but asking for that help would compromise everything she believes about justice and professional ethics. Her restraint reveals her moral strength and Tony's limitations. Christopher's drug addiction spirals out of control when the pressure of his relationship with Adriana combines with the stress of his position in the organization. He starts using heroin more frequently, missing important meetings, and making mistakes that could have fatal consequences for everyone involved. The intervention organized by Tony becomes a mob-style attempt at rehabilitation, threats mixed with genuine concern, violence threatened alongside offers of help. Christopher enters treatment, but everyone knows he's going through the motions to avoid more serious consequences rather than addressing the underlying addiction. Tony Blundetto's attempt to stay legitimate fails when financial pressures force him back into criminal activities. He starts working with the Koreans in money laundering operations, but independent criminal activity without Tony Soprano's permission violates the rules that govern their relationship. The Korean situation becomes complicated when business disputes turn violent. Tony Blundetto kills a Korean gang member during a robbery, creating problems that extend beyond family boundaries. His actions bring unwanted attention and create conflicts with other criminal organizations. Johnny Sack's relationship with Tony becomes strained when territorial disputes arise over construction contracts and gambling operations. What started as cooperation between New Jersey and New York families turns into competition that threatens to escalate into open warfare. The Phil Leotardo introduction brings new tension to the New York relationship. He's Carmine Lupertazzi's brother-in-law, old-school mafia who doesn't respect Tony's authority or methods. Phil represents the traditional approach to organized crime, brutal, uncompromising, and intolerant of weakness. Adriana's final attempt to escape her FBI cooperation leads to the most heartbreaking episode of the series. She tells Christopher about her situation, hoping he'll understand and help her find a solution. But Christopher's loyalty to Tony proves stronger than his love for Adriana, and his decision destroys both their lives. The scene where Christopher tells Tony about Adriana's cooperation becomes a masterclass in betrayal and loyalty. Christopher chooses the family over the woman he loves, but the decision haunts him for the rest of the series. Some choices can't be undone, and some betrayals can't be forgiven. Adriana's murder happens off-screen, but the emotional impact reverberates through the rest of the series. Her death represents the cost of getting involved with the criminal lifestyle. Innocence becomes a casualty, and love becomes a weapon used against the people who care about you. Season 5 establishes the themes that will dominate the final season: the possibility of changing your nature, the price of loyalty, and the way past decisions continue affecting present circumstances. Every character faces consequences for choices made earlier in the series. Season 6. The final season splits into 2 parts, with Tony getting shot by Uncle Junior in the first episode. Junior's dementia has progressed to the point where he doesn't recognize his nephew, and in his confusion, he sees Tony as a threat and shoots him. The shooting forces Tony into a coma that becomes a journey through his subconscious. Tony's coma experiences reveal his psychological state through surreal dream sequences where he becomes Kevin Finnerty, a traveling salesman lost in a strange hotel. These dreams explore his guilt, his fear of death, and his confusion about identity. The coma becomes a metaphor for Tony's spiritual crisis. While Tony hovers between life and death, the family business starts falling apart. Silvio tries to hold everything together, but he lacks Tony's psychological insight and political skills. The crew begins questioning whether Tony will survive, and if he doesn't, who will take control of the organization. Carmela's vigil at the hospital reveals how much she still loves Tony despite their separation. She prays, makes deals with God, and promises to be a better wife if he survives. The crisis forces her to confront her true feelings about their marriage and the lifestyle they've built together. Tony's recovery brings him back changed but not transformed. He remembers the peace he felt in the coma and tries to become a better person, but the demands of his position make genuine change impossible. You can't run a criminal organization with kindness and forgiveness. Vito Spatafora gets exposed as gay when he's spotted at a nightclub in Greenwich Village. In the hyper-masculine world of organized crime, homosexuality is seen as weakness and betrayal. Vito flees to New Hampshire hoping to escape the consequences, but you can't run from your nature or your past. The Vito situation creates a crisis for Tony because Vito is a good earner, and killing him would cost the family money. But tolerating homosexuality would make Tony appear weak to his crew and other families. The decision becomes a test of Tony's leadership and his crew's loyalty. Phil Leotardo's hatred for the New Jersey family intensifies when Vito marries his cousin Marie. Phil sees Vito's homosexuality as a personal insult to his family's honor, and he demands satisfaction. The conflict between personal hatred and business necessity becomes impossible to resolve peacefully. Christopher's marriage to Adriana's cousin Kelly represents his attempt to move on from his guilt over Adriana's death. But the marriage is built on lies and trauma, and Christopher's continued drug use makes him unreliable husband and father. Some wounds never heal completely. The relationship between Christopher and Tony deteriorates as Christopher's resentment grows. He feels unappreciated despite his loyalty, and he begins questioning whether Tony ever really cared about him or just used him. Their final confrontation reveals years of accumulated grievances and disappointments. AJ's depression becomes a major storyline as he struggles with the family legacy and his own identity. He attempts suicide, goes through therapy, and tries to find meaning in his privileged but morally compromised life. His crisis represents the cost of growing up in a criminal family. Meadow's relationship with Finn DeTrolio ends when the pressure of knowing too much about her family becomes unbearable. She starts dating Patrick Parisi, son of one of Tony's crew members, suggesting that she's accepting her role in the family business rather than rejecting it. The FBI investigation reaches new levels of sophistication with advanced surveillance techniques and psychological pressure tactics. They're building a comprehensive case against the family, and the walls are closing in from multiple directions. Everyone feels the pressure of impending indictments. Silvio's loyalty gets tested when he's forced to make decisions about family business without Tony's guidance. His attempts to maintain order reveal his limitations as a leader while also showing his genuine commitment to the organization and its values. Paulie's paranoia reaches new heights when he starts suspecting everyone of being informants or potential threats. His relationship with Tony becomes strained when old secrets surface and new suspicions develop. Lifetime loyalty doesn't guarantee continued trust. The war with New York escalates when Phil Leotardo decides that coexistence with the New Jersey family is impossible. He starts targeting Tony's crew members, forcing a conflict that neither side can win without devastating losses. War becomes inevitable when negotiation fails. Bobby Bacala's relationship with Janice brings unexpected stability to both their lives, but it also makes him a target when the conflict with New York intensifies. His death becomes one of the most shocking moments of the series because he was one of the few genuinely decent people in Tony's world. Silvio's shooting and hospitalization removes another key figure from Tony's inner circle, leaving him increasingly isolated as enemies multiply and allies disappear. The organization that once seemed invincible begins crumbling under external pressure and internal conflicts. Christopher's final relapse and death in a car accident removes Tony's last connection to the next generation of the family. Tony's decision to let Christopher die rather than save him reveals how completely the criminal lifestyle has corrupted his capacity for love and loyalty. The final episodes build toward a resolution that never comes. Tony meets with his family at Holston's diner, surrounded by potential threats and uncertain about his future. The famous cut to black ending leaves his fate ambiguous, forcing viewers to confront their own assumptions about justice and consequences. Tony Soprano's journey from panic attacks to that final moment in the diner where everything just stops. Did Tony get whacked? Did he live happily ever after? Did the FBI finally get their man? David Chase never tells us, and that's the genius of it. The ending forces us to confront our own feelings about what Tony deserved and what justice actually means. What do you think happened in that diner? Did the guy in the members-only jacket come out of the bathroom with a gun? Was Tony's paranoia finally justified? Or was he just a middle-aged mob boss eating onion rings with his family? And here's the real question. After watching 6 seasons of Tony Soprano's life, were you rooting for him to survive or hoping he'd finally face consequences for all the terrible things he'd done? Drop your theories in the comments and hit that subscribe button for more recaps of the best shows in television history.